Hello, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives, a cultural journey from here to there. My name is Tyler Burke, and I'm the founder of Omnian, and I'm joined today by our Director of Training, Chris Garcia.
Hey, Taylor, how's it going?
Here we are again, week 3.
All right, let's do it.
Already, can you believe it?
Yeah.
Goes quick. So, in our discussion today, we're going to be talking about moving from the idea of attention seeking, or looking at what we traditionally used to label as attention-seeking behavior, to understanding the why behind that and starting to look at that same behavior as connection-seeking.
All right, so let's give our perspective on this. She's just doing it for attention. He's acting out again. Ignore it and move on. How many times have we heard these lines in support settings? More importantly, how many times have we believed them? For people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, behaviors often and quickly get slapped with the attention-seeking label, as if that label alone explains everything and justifies doing nothing. The prevailing strategy? Ignore it. Ignore the behavior that you want to go away and reinforce the behavior that you want to see. Sounds strategic on paper, but in reality, it can be devastating, because what's actually being ignored isn't a behavior. It's a person reaching out for connection. And that's typically connection to a trusted person.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, this one is something that I've heard a lot over the years, and I know this can, at first glance, because you hear it so commonly of just ignore it. And even when we get into the, ignore the behavior you want to go away, reinforce the behavior you want to see more, and things. This really gets into some pretty traditional sort of behaviorism and things. And I think it's important that there is science behind a lot of those things. Just because something's effective doesn't necessarily make it humane.
Yeah.
And I think that really what we're really hoping to do is not say those things aren't ineffective, because it can be an effective strategy to change the behavior. But if we sort of take a step back, I think really honoring and recognizing someone's humanity and some things that are going on underneath it really needs to be discussed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Tyler, I want to just touch on the phrase itself, attention seeking, because
Mhm.
it's just flawed in just what it means, because
Mhm.
it implies that the person supported is behaving, this is a purposeful action,
Mhm.
and then gets labeled as acting up or inappropriate behavior.
Yeah.
And then that's the justification that's used to ignore the behavior.
Yeah.
So just the term itself is flawed in what it means.
It is, and I think it speaks to sometimes how often we misread an antecedent,
Yeah, for sure, right?
right? And we sort of, and I hate to even say it, but it even sort of plays into how often we sort of treat people like bags of behavior.
Yeah.
And we sort of miss
Right.
some of the humanity behind it, and really, and even to look at ourselves. And we're gonna, in a few minutes, we'll get into sort of a silly story, but sort of illustrates that we all sort of can go through some of these things, and um, we really need to sort of keep the humanity.
Absolutely. All right, let's go over the knowledge.
Yep.
The term attention seeking has become a red flag phrase in support work, one that invites dismissal instead of curiosity. Yet, when we zoom out, we realize something simple and deeply human. The need for attention is the need to belong, to be seen, and to matter. For many people with IDD, behavior is communication. And when their environment lacks consistent, genuine connection, people find ways to ask for it, the only way they know how. That might look like yelling, throwing, grabbing, repeating, not because they're trying to be difficult, but because they're saying, please notice me, please connect. And the traditional response to that, ignore it.
You know, when I in going through this and even listening to you read that, it seems like almost every time I've seen this, that it typically comes with a real sense of frustration.
Yeah.
from the supporter, right? Where it's always like, oh, John's doing that thing again,
Yeah.
or and I think that again, when we think that, and it's typically, I don't even know that we necessarily think through it super deeply, but people don't just wake up in the morning saying, I'm just going to be a real jerk today, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna, you know, uh, just do all of these things that can really frustrate the people around me, or kind of get on people's nerves, as you will. Um, I think that not everything is volitional. Not all behavior is an intentional, thought through act. It can be purposeful, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it was, um, you know, really thought through and intentional.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well,
You know,
I mean, they may not even know how to, because of what they're lacking,
hmm
right? The person's brain may be so dysregulated
yeah,
that they're even unsure about how to interact in a positive way,
yeah,
right? So when this talks about grabbing or repeating, that's that's a real honest attempt
yeah,
at their connection.
yeah.
But that's just
Well, and we're going to see even later in the session that a lot of times we all do some things
yeah,
that are quote unquote attention seeking from employees, from coworkers, and things. I mean, this
absolutely,
is a human thing.
absolutely. That's a good
Um,
point.
so yeah,
Yep. All right, so let me share a story, and it's when being seen doesn't feel so good. Okay, let's say it was your big day, birthday, graduation, some type of celebration in your honor. You were the center of attention. People clapped, cameras flashed, compliments rolled in, and you smiled, posed, and you soaked it all in. Now, later that night, when you're scrolling through pictures or maybe just looking in the mirror, checking your teeth, you see it, something green hanging out of your nose. The kind of thing that someone should have told you about, but no one did. And just like that, the memory of that special day, that special celebration starts to shift. What felt like a celebration now feels like humiliation. What felt like they were all looking at me suddenly feels like they were all laughing at me. See, here's the thing, the attention didn't change, but how it made you feel did.
Hmm. I mean, I've been there.
Yeah,
That is,
no.
scenarios like that, and it can be something hanging out of your nose. It can be a wardrobe malfunction, a zipper down, whatever. Right? I mean, it's an illustration. I think one that we can all really relate to, and I think that the intent behind this story, and really where we're going with this, is to really expose the myth that attention isn't really what people are after. People, it's not just eyes on you. It's not just people in the room focusing on you. Because as we just saw, that can feel really good and that can feel really bad,
Mhm.
right? So if you put yourself in the person's supported shoes, and maybe the behavior that they're exhibiting is really not a very positive one, well, don't think for a second that that's somehow fulfilling, you know, and that really isn't the point. It isn't just eyes on you. We have to keep focused on the message here, and that's it's how it makes us feel. And I think that we need to put ourselves in that position as we go through this, because this is something it's just a human experience.
100%. And, as someone who has probably at this point stood in front of thousands of people at this point and
Many tens of
talked
thousands of people. Yeah.
and spent hours in front of them to
Yeah.
realize afterwards that my zipper's down.
No.
Yeah. I and you know more than anybody, Tyler. I take a lot of pride in trying to,
Yeah. Yeah.
capture the moment and get the people in, and then when you
There's an art
afterwards,
to it. Yeah.
yeah, and afterwards, and you feel so good and you realize your zipper's down or you do have something in your nose, yeah,
Yeah.
man, it definitely takes away. Everything does shift. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people can probably relate to that for sure.
Yeah.
So, like we said, it's about connection, not just attention. This story highlights a truth we don't talk about enough in the IDD field or anywhere really. Attention isn't inherently positive, it's neutral. It only becomes meaningful, hurtful, or healing based on how it's experienced. That's why labeling someone as attention seeking misses the point entirely. People aren't just asking to be seen, they're asking to be seen with kindness, with care, and with connection. They're reaching out in the best way they know how for validation, for safety, for human response. If someone spent an entire event noticing your green nose but said nothing to you, you wouldn't feel connected. You'd feel exposed, alone, probably even betrayed. Uh, yeah, and I think that labeling someone with attention-seeking behavior, when we say it misses the point, like
Mhm.
I get it. That's a pretty strong statement, right?
Mhm.
But I think that we get so caught up in good behavior and what's bad behavior, which kind of controls a lot of our reactions, right?
Mhm.
But I think the reason it misses the point is because we forget that in the moment, what we're seeing basically is that person is what that person's brain is capable of manifesting at that point,
Mhm.
right? That you may be seeing the best they they're capable of doing in that
Yep.
moment to create connection,
Yep.
and it just doesn't always look good.
Well, and I think that, when we talk about a DSP or really anybody being informed,
Yeah,
I think really what we're talking about is being able to like read between the lines,
yeah,
being able
good
to
way to say it.
see
Yeah,
a behavior, a response, whether it's a person you support, whether it's an employee,
yeah,
coworker, whatever, being able to see what's going on and sort of understand what's could be happening behind the scenes.
yeah. That's
And
a
if
good
we
way to say
don't,
it.
then we at least need to stop, take a deep breath, and ask ourselves, why is this happening? What's going on beneath it? Not just behavior good, behavior bad,
Yeah,
reward, punish, ignore, whatever. And just stop the focus on the behavior itself all the time. Take a step back and say, why could this be happening? And when we do that, that really empowers us to respond in a way that is meaningful rather than, just these flippant responses that actually may make the situation far
yeah,
worse.
absolutely.
Right? I mean, think about it. If somebody has a deep need for connection and the people in their life, maybe the closest people in their life, their response is to ignore them, it's the very opposite thing of what they're genuinely needing. And just because we can extinguish a behavior or have something that might be challenging for us go away, we're amplifying the real situation and the real problem and the real need that's going unmet. Right?
Yeah, it's funny when you say it like that. What I think about is the person whose needs are getting satisfied,
Mhm.
the staff, and it's kind of like this growing in opposite directions
Yeah.
happening literally from that,
Yeah.
ignoring it. Absolutely.
Well, and that
Yeah.
brings us back to one of the points that we made, I believe, last week. How do we judge a good session? How do we judge a good
Yeah.
day? Is it the lack of challenge for us? Is it the lack of behavior? Or is it actually meeting someone's needs and helping them have a successful day based on a higher quality of life?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just a total shift in mindset and view.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The motivation behind this. When we treat connection seeking behaviors as inconvenient disruptions, we send a message that asking for relationship is wrong, or worse, ineffective. For the person supported, this reinforces isolation and disconnection. For the supporter, it breeds frustration and emotional distance. But when we shift our mindset from behavior management to relationship building, everything changes. Instead of seeing a person as trying to get something, we see a person trying to feel something like safety, warmth, inclusion, even love. This shift matters, not just because it reduces challenging behavior, which it often does, but because it honors the human need to belong.
Mm.
And it's that connection based approach, I think, that ultimately proves that the support is unconditional, right? It's not
Mhm.
contingent
Yeah.
on you not getting me upset or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's important at this point too to point out when we talk about connection, it's vitally important for the supporter and the person supported to have a real connection, right?
Yeah,
And to really have an environment that is safe and inviting. But this also speaks to the need of having connections that are not paid, that are
yeah,
not just between the supporter and the person supported.
good point.
When someone's life is full of other connections, where there's friends, where there's a community of people around them that they know are supportive of them, that they have their back, the need for just random attention, if you will, is going to go down because that
Yeah,
internal need is being met. And I think that we've always got to be mindful that as the paid supporters, we really one of our main functions is to help facilitate other connections around the person so that the needs that are going on, again, behind the scenes for someone who's attention seeking can get met in those non-paid environments.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's growth. Absolutely. Good
absolutely.
point. Habits and habit cues. Supporters are often trained with good intentions but outdated frameworks. The old behavioral mantra, ignore what you don't want, reinforce what you do want, doesn't always hold up when what's being ignored is a cry for human connection,
Mm,
human contact.
mm,
Let's build some new habits. Instead of ignore that, they're just doing it for attention. Try, what connection might the person be needing right now? Instead of disengaging, try moments of validation. Hey, John, come walk with me, talk with me. Instead of reinforcing silence,
mm,
assist in building and reinforcing relationship.
mm.
Be intentional through the day because even small connections, a nod, a smile, a shared moment, can meet the need and change the trajectory of the day.
Yeah. I think this is a great point, and certainly as
Mhm,
we're talking about habits, if we can get into the habit of even body language and when we first see the person, what's on our even if we had a terrible day, terrible morning, whatever, to be really mindful when we first maybe see the person that we're supporting to do our very best, like, to be excited, to be, open-eyed and engage with people, let them know that we're excited to see them. They're not a burden to us. It's not another chore, it's not another task, not another thing to fix.
yeah,
But it's a human being, and we want that from our partners, right? We want that from our friends. We want that
yeah,
from anybody around us. When somebody shows up and the first moment you see them, they look just miserable and like they don't want to be there, and you
yeah.
kind of feel like this person is distant and they want to be anywhere but with you. That feels terrible, right? So to get in a daily habit where we can try to be intentional to positively engage people, something really to think about.
Yeah, and I think the practicality of these is important. Like, for example, when it says like walk with me, talk with me, like it's such a simple thing to do, but it's so important because what you're doing is you're giving the person an opportunity and maybe yourself a chance to just naturally get into cool brain.
Yep.
You could walk and not even talk for the first 5 minutes.
Yep.
It's a judgment free zone.
Mhm.
Let's just talk about, you don't even have to talk about maybe what happened initially,
Yeah.
but maybe that's the opening to get to, hey, when I asked you to help me with this or to do something, you seem to react this way.
Yeah.
And I think, well, not that I think we know what this does. It's not just a one person finding the solution. Now we're as a partnership working
Yeah.
together
Yep.
as a team to find the solution, and that's connection ultimately, right? When you can work together with somebody else, that's great.
This walk with me, talk with me.
Yeah,
Not only is it like an actual even like de-escalation technique,
yeah,
but it makes me think of think about even maybe if your partner or if you're married, I mean there's it's quite common for the dynamic to be like, will you just listen to me and not try to fix me?
hmm
Can I just be heard and without you telling me what I should do or how this can change or right? And I think that's an important point even within this relationship. Walk and talk with somebody, but maybe it's not the time to just tell them what they need to do better, tell them what they need to do differently or something. Hell, talk about something else, you
Yeah.
know? The point is just getting away and talking and sort of connecting. Again, not always just in fix it mode.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move to the angle of leadership,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So leaders must challenge systems and staff mindsets that treat emotional bids as behavior problems. So ask, are we ignoring attempts at connection in order to not reinforce undesirable behaviors? Are our strategies trauma informed or just habit formed?
Mm, gotcha.
Do our plans focus more on extinguishing behavior than cultivating relationships? Build cultures where connection is prioritized over control. Train for empathy, not just compliance.
I like this in the within the leadership section, because
Yeah.
even you take this into the workplace. You maybe if you are an executive, if you are a manager, again, these really are cultural topics that we're talking about. And people know when sort of what your priorities are by the way that you talk to them. And people can feel, and certainly the people that maybe you supervise or something, they know if you're prioritizing just task completion and control over connection, and that can be a really big shift within the workplace. And I mean, almost every topic we're going to be talking about through this entire series applies to all people, not just people supported. So I really appreciate this section.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, let's give some relatable real world examples of behaviors that are often labeled as attention seeking in the workplace, especially among employees, that are actually attempts to connect, be validated, or feel seen. And a lot of you will relate to this. It'll remind you of people you've worked with, you work with. And I think an important thing to remember is that it's okay because
Hmm.
everybody at some point acts like this and behaves like this. And it's for the same reasons that we said. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, we're not here to fix people. If we can start to look at someone's behavior, someone supported or an employee, know what's going on behind it, it informs
Mhm.
us on how to respond because all people do these things. We are all in this position at some point in our life, within some relationship, some community,
Yep.
some environment. We're all going to go through it. Um, so yeah, we really
Okay.
need to keep that in mind.
So let's go over verbal behaviors. Frequent complaining or venting, repeatedly pointing out issues, often in public forums, that may be an attempt to feel heard or validated, not just to stir the pot.
Mm.
Interrupting meetings or conversations, cutting others off, or jumping in may come from a need to feel included, important, or not left behind.
I assume that's a pretty common one in classrooms.
Oh, it is a lot. Yes, it is. It is. And you just listen with an intent ear and validate. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
constant storytelling or one upping. Sharing personal anecdotes or outdoing someone else's story might be a way to say, notice me. I matter here too. Over apologizing or asking repeatedly for approval. Not just about insecurity. This may be a bid for reassurance or connection.
Mm.
Let's look at nonverbal behavioral patterns. Dramatic exits or withdrawing. Storming out or going silent may feel like manipulation, but often it's a I don't know how else to ask for help or support moment. Constant need for feedback or praise. Repeated check ins like, was that okay? Or what did you think? Maybe someone trying to gauge their value or their place in that group.
You know, if I could
Go
jump in
ahead, please.
on this again, and we sort of alluded to this in the beginning. Um, as the other person, some of these things can be really frustrating. It's like, oh my god, you're saying this again. Are you really bringing this up again? Are you really right? And so I think that can really that should and hopefully as we become and more informed, be one of those habit cues when we even feel ourselves start to get a little frustrated with somebody. Because no, again, people aren't waking up trying to be difficult and frustrating, when in the morning. Um, so to keep this in the front of our mind, they're doing the best they can with what they got, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'm just kind of I'm going through this list with you, just shaking my head like, man, I've been here so many times. Even on the other side, it's like, I got so frustrated. I reacted so poorly. Um, so anyway,
Yeah. No, for
just point
sure.
that out. Yeah.
Taking on too much or always being the hero. Going above and beyond may not be about work ethic alone. It might be a way to earn validation or avoid feeling invisible.
Hmm.
Showing up late consistently.
Chris.
Yeah,
Just
right.
kidding.
Sometimes chronic lateness is about control, sure, but sometimes it's a subconscious attempt to create attention that's otherwise missing. And to be honest, with this one, probably consistently showing up early is probably part of control too, in a way, because if you ask my
Yeah,
family when we're
yeah,
going somewhere, yeah, get out the door at this time, and it's a whole thing. But no,
yeah.
absolutely, yeah,
Well, and then constantly reminding me how early you are all the time,
yeah, right.
wanting validation for that.
Well, and just to that point, it's important, especially again, for my role of being an instructor for so long. You do sometimes want to know, you want to let the boss know, hey, this person really liked the class, look at what they wrote. Or I remember as a DSP, if a parent would tell me something,
Hmm.
I'd tell them, hey, so and so, they really liked what we did.
Hmm.
It is so natural, it is, and it could be labeled as attention seeking, right? But it's so innate, I think. I don't know. I know we keep going back to that, but it's a very important point.
Well, and as we're in the leadership section of this, I would also point out as a side note
Yeah.
that a lot of the needs that we're talking about that exist can be met proactively. So
Good
even
point.
as a supervisor, as a manager, to brag about or advocate for the people that maybe you supervise, to coworkers and maybe the people above you, and to as the third party be the one to bring that stuff to attention,
Great.
right? Or if I for between you and I, or within our organization, when I brag about you to the rest of our employees here or something, right? It's a way where if I know that you have that need, I don't have to wait for you to ask for it. I don't need for you to get to a place where that bubbles up inside so much that you act in ways that maybe you'd rather not. I can just help you get that need met even proactively, asked for or not.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then.
Oh boy, you're going to want to raise.
Can that become burdensome on the lead on a person in that leadership position? Isn't that Can that be fatiguing to them where they feel like they have to do this now?
I don't know that. I suppose it could. If you feel like you have to do it 5 times a day for
Yeah.
every employee or something. But I think that it's a very small. It doesn't take any energy. It doesn't take a lot just to give a little bit of recognition or to, um, you know, sort of expose the good deeds, if you
Yeah.
will, of the people that you're supervising. In the same way that you would want to do something similar, maybe with your partner or your
Mhm.
spouse
Yeah.
or your children. Being relational and being positive doesn't have to be a burden. And hopefully it becomes such a habit. And again, right, a habit being a response in the absence of thought, right? It's just how we
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
So if this just becomes our initial response, I don't think there is a burden in
Gotcha. Thanks. Yeah.
that.
Thank you. Digital and passive aggressive signals, overuse of messaging apps or email FYIs, dropping constant updates in group chats may reflect a need to be seen as contributing or relevant.
Yeah.
Social media oversharing about work, not always about ego, could be an effort to say, please notice I'm trying, especially if they don't feel seen in the workplace.
Mm.
You know, I can definitely sometimes be really uh, probably overly critical of like this is of a people who like post pictures of themselves at Special Olympics or
Mhm.
because it's like, what are they trying to do, show how good they
Mhm.
are,
Mhm. Mhm.
and But that's, again, it's someone who's just trying, maybe
Yeah.
trying to do their best. And I'm kind of calling out my own
Mhm.
BS right now, but
Yeah.
because again, I think when we talk about what's common is we also do that too. Like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, okay. Like the couple that always post about how in love they are. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Oh,
go
brother.
on, enough, right? Like,
Yeah.
I get it.
Well, and it's, even to, what we stated here, it's not always about ego.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and look at how much judgment just can come off of,
Yeah,
of that interaction by simply understanding maybe what's going on behind this isn't the person just being all full of themselves
yeah,
and bragging and putting it in our face. Could actually be a genuine ask for validation.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Final thought here before we get to our one thing. It's time to retire the phrase attention-seeking behavior. Let's move from managing behavior to meeting needs, from ignoring cries for connection to answering them with presence. Because no one should have to scream to be seen.
So that brings us to our one thing. And this one thing is how we end all of these perspective series and weeks, because it all does ultimately boil down to the one thing, and that's this. And it's a statement that we can say to ourselves, both you and I and everybody within this field, and hopefully we do it on a daily basis. And that's this. Today I choose, in my role, to assist people in getting their needs met. Right? It's the one thing. And that is the thing. If we can, on a daily basis together in this community, that is how we can get from here to there.